Hey, I wanted to come on and talk a little bit about mental health and, in particular, anxiety and my own struggles with anxiety over the years. I don't know why it's something that I haven't talked about up until now, um, because back in my early 20s, it was a serious issue for me, and I really did struggle. And now that I've got to this stage of my life, I think sometimes I kind of forget, and I not that I forget, but I've moved so far away from it now that it nearly seems like a separate life. But it was a really hard time for me, and it's only been recently. I was talking to three separate people lately who still struggle with panic attacks, struggle with anxiety, with mental health issues, and that was only three people within the past 2 weeks that I've been speaking to. So I know it's a real issue. It's a real issue that's out there, and I think with pressures of today, particularly after everything we've all been through over the past 2 years, that it really is something that needs to be addressed and needs to be recognized and shared so that people don't feel so alone like I did back in the day. So anyway, I will just tell you a little bit about my story with it, um, and kind of how I got through it and led me to where I am today, really. So I had my first panic attack back in 2007, summer of 2007. I had just finished college. I was 21, and I was due to start my first teaching job that September. I was on holidays with my family down in Dingle, and we were having a great time. Um, we'd had a few drinks the night before. Me and my sister and my mum had stayed up late and we'd had drinks, and so it was a bit of a hangover, but nothing more than usual. You know, at that stage of my life, I was out most weekends, so I drank every weekend at the time, um, and so the hangover wasn't any worse than usual. I was able to get up and about and walked around the town, looking in the shops, and then all of a sudden it just hit me like a ton of bricks. The only way I can describe it is it literally felt like every sense left my body. So literally, I felt like I left my body. I it's not even a feeling of faint. It's the most disconnected feeling I've ever felt in my life. It comes on suddenly. You're walking and suddenly, whoosh, just completely out of your body. Um, and of course I panicked and grabbed onto. Oh, I need to sit down. I thought I was either going to faint, collapse, or die. To be quite honest, I really thought there's something serious wrong with me. Obviously, I didn't know at the time that it was a panic attack, and I thought there was something physically wrong with me. So that was the first one. Kind of put it down to the hangover, dehydration, kind of low blood sugars. Eventually, once I kind of rationalized with myself, and that was fine. But then, kind of continued my lifestyle. My lifestyle at the time was very much, working during the week, and actually, I was still in college at that time, so I was still working in the hotel at the time. So I was, well, I finished college, but I was working hotel hours, but all through college, I was working college work all week, and I went out drinking Friday night and Saturday night, and got up on Saturday and Sunday morning and cleaned rooms in the hotel. So I was on the go all the time. The regular binge drinking was not helping, and yeah. So then, kind of after that first panic attack, got back to that kind of routine, and it started happening again, particularly with the hangover, and it would happen more often. Um, and it was getting really scary. The first one that I remember that really affected my day to day life was where it wasn't just a hangover day. Was I was driving to work, so I had started working in Ashford as a teacher, and I was driving from Bray down to Ashford in my little Navy Yaris, and I hadn't been driving all that long, so I was still a nervous enough driver, but I was driving along the motorway. Um, I didn't have a hangover that day or anything, and I like that suddenly it came over me suddenly, and I literally felt like I had left my body. Obviously I was driving about 100 kilometers an hour, got such a fright, was convinced I was going to crash the car. I managed to pull in on the hard shoulder, and I rang my dad, and my dad drove straight down to me, and he kind of said, no, you're not able to go to work, or, you know, what are you going to do? And I said, no, just drive me to work. I have to go to work. I can't not go to work. So I pushed on through. We left my car on the side of the road, and he drove me to work, and I kind of pretended I was okay all day, and literally screaming inside. And I kind of lived like that for about 2 years, probably. At first, I was convinced it was something physical wrong with me. So like I went to the doctor loads of times. The doctor must have thought I was insane. I thought I was insane because he was like, your blood pressure's fine. We sent it off for bloods came back okay. He referred me to the heart clinic, so I had a heart monitor on to see if there was something wrong with my heart, and nothing was coming back. But yet this was still, this constant out of body hitting me like a ton of bricks thing was happening every day at this stage. So got to the stage I developed a phobia of driving. Standing in a classroom was terrifying. Yard duty was an absolute nightmare because I had nowhere to sit if I felt that way, and obviously didn't want to put on a show in front of the kids or other staff members. So it was a really, really difficult time, just a constant worry, a constant anxious cycle of worrying when it's going to hit again, how I'm going to feel, and what I would do in that situation. Always looking for a way out of somewhere. Always looking, you know, if I didn't stop driving, I didn't stop working. It's funny. I broke down one day, and my mum was like, "What are you going to do? You know, you don't have the luxury of, just quitting your job. What are you going to do? Quit your job, and we'll look after you forever. You know, you need to push through this." And you know, that might sound harsh, but anyone who knows my mum, that is my mum, and she was right. And I think if it wasn't for my parents being like that for me, that I would have surrendered to it. And I'm so glad I didn't. I'm so glad I pushed through. But anyway, probably should have pushed through with getting the right help. So what happened then was I just continuously did that. I lived in agony really for about 2 years, just constantly feeling anxious, feeling terrified, and feeling exhausted. So then it got to the stage that and these spells were happening every day, got to the stage then that I'd sit down in the evenings, and I would be so exhausted that my breathing would be shallow. I wouldn't be able to catch a full breath, and it would often lead to, like, me and Dave would be sitting watching TV in the evenings, and I'd have to sit forward and be trying to catch my breath. And the same thing, even lying in bed, I would sit up suddenly and just wouldn't be able to catch my breath. A few times, you know, it got to the stage I would hyperventilate and be like, I think I need an ambulance, and he would have to talk me down and be like, you don't need an ambulance, you're okay. We kind of figured at this stage that they were panic attacks, but it's still, every single one that happened, I was convinced I was going to die. It got to the stage then, anything I heard on the news, any horrible story someone had to tell about something terrible happening, it would just, that tight feeling in my chest would happen, and I would be convinced that that was going to happen to me or to someone I loved. And it just really, really became a really unhealthy, vicious cycle. And it's funny because looking back now, it worries me how much a human can be suffering and completely conceal it from everybody around them, because like, that's it, I was suffering. I didn't really know, like, it's funny, I didn't even know it at the time. I wasn't depressed, but yet I was struggling through every day. I was exhausted. I was just so overwhelmed by it and just wanted to feel okay, that it was a really, really tough time. But yet most people around me, unless I opened up to them, most people around me didn't know what was going on. So I could have been standing there on the yard and another teacher coming up to speak to me, and I could literally have gone whoosh out of my body and just literally holding on, like, you'll be okay in your head. And that person wouldn't even notice, because even though I was screaming inside, they wouldn't notice, because I was holding this front. And so that went on. So obviously that was exhausting. So eventually, anyway, after about 2 years of it, an awful trip to New York. Me and Dave had saved and gone to New York, and it was an absolute nightmare. I just wasn't able for it. It was just too overwhelming, and I just wasn't well. And once I got back from New York, um, I said to Dave, we need to go to the doctor. Like, we need to sort this once and for all. So we went back, and my doctor finally was like, okay, yeah. So he gave me a diagnosis of panic disorder. So panic disorder is basically chronic, regular panic attacks, as far as I know. So I know I don't appreciate the label now, years later, but at the time, it gave me a sense of relief, because I was like, I'm not alone. This is a thing. I'm not crazy, and other people obviously suffer from it too. So that was a huge relief. So he prescribed me Lexapro. So I was put on medication. So Lexapro, for anyone who's not familiar, is a mild antidepressant. So I was on the lowest dosage of it, which is a serotonin stimulating drug. So it slowly builds up the serotonin levels in your brain. So I was on one tablet a day, and it took about 6 weeks to build up. And then finally, after like about 2 years, if not more, of pure hell, it started to subside. It started to ease, and I could think clearly again, and it was amazing. And then he referred me to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So I spent a few years doing CBT and really learning the tools to deal with my anxious thoughts, my thought patterns, my mindset, and then how to actually deal with the panic in the panic situation. So I spent a lot of time with a wonderful woman called Joan, who helped me through so much at that time. And that kind of, it brought me out of it. And it's funny, like I'm not by any means a doctor or an expert, so I'm totally talking from my own experience. But from my own experience, I needed medical help. I needed the medication to help fix that imbalance in my brain. It had gotten so bad that was the stage I was at, and at the time I remember feeling a little bit ashamed that I had to take something. And looking back now, I just think that's so ridiculous. I'm like, if it helps you get back to your health so that you can learn the tools to deal with your health in a more healthy way, if you like. So, like, I don't believe in just medicating, covering the problem, and okay, on you go with your life. But I do think that medication and, well, medical attention, that's completely up to your doctor, whether that's medication, has a part to play in the recovery from things like this. Followed by therapy, whatever the type of therapy is that's needed, because that's really what fixed me. It really is. As much as people might not want to open up, it really does fix things. You don't have to live like that forever. It doesn't have to be that way. So I stayed anyway on the medication until I found out I was pregnant with my first child, Jaden. So that was in summer 2009. So I started taking the medication just before Christmas 2007. And yeah, Christmas 2007 up to, yeah, so I was on, yeah, maybe it was the year after. I can't remember. No, it could have been the year after, 2008, Christmas 2008, possibly. Anyway, I was a good couple of years on the medication. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, I went to see the doctor, and the doctor took me off, weaned me off it slowly, and I wasn't on it while I was pregnant. And I had some ups and downs in my pregnancy, a little bit anxious, but it was manageable. I had the tools to deal with it. And then when Jaden was born, it hit me quite suddenly. So obviously, what happens after you have a baby with your hormones and the imbalances that there is anyway, that I suddenly felt extremely anxious. And for the first time, I felt what it felt like to be depressed, and it frightened me. I remember sitting on the couch one of the days just feeling so disconnected from myself and from everything around me, and so much so that like my toes were curling. And like Dave was frightened. He was like, we're going to the doctor tomorrow, like, that I just really felt completely disconnected from myself, and everything around me frightened the shit out of me, basically. So went back to the doctor, went back on the medication, went back to the therapy, and did that for another few months. got myself right. And then from there on, eventually I came off it. I didn't need the medication anymore. I had learned what I needed to learn, the tools I needed from getting the professional help that I needed to move forward with my life. And that's what I did. I went on, I had 2 more kids. And it wasn't actually only until 2017, until my 3rd child was born, that I really embraced a healthy lifestyle. So up until then, I was still drinking most weekends, and when I was drinking, I was having smokes, and it was just, I wasn't, I was eating plenty of pasta and cheese, and was my favorite dinner, and I didn't take a whole lot of vegetables or fruit, up until after Kai, my last child, was born in 2017. And then I really changed my lifestyle, and since then I have never looked back. I haven't, like, life has had its ups and downs since he was born, but I have never, ever felt the way I felt anxiety wise since. And it is totally down to just taking control of my lifestyle, giving my body the best chance, just knowing that I have the confidence in myself that I'm giving my body the best chance here in this life. And what is going to happen will happen. I've just learned to let go and just be like, you can't control everything. Control what you can control, and then just relax and surrender to it and enjoy life, learning to stop living in the future, which would have been a huge thing for me, constantly worrying about the future and what if this happened, catastrophizing. Catastrophizing. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but in my head, creating catastrophe situations which didn't happen, and just stopping all of that thinking. And it took a long time, doing a lot of reading, a lot of self-help books, and lots on spirituality. Really into that, so you might notice that from my page. I think that's why I love to post a lot about mindset, is because of that. But as for fitness and exercise, I was the least active person you'd have ever. I wouldn't even have run for a bus back in my teens and my 20s, really. But fitness for me now is nothing to do with trying to look a certain way. For me, it is totally about mindset. It's my meditation. It is my escape. It is my way of releasing stress. And it's a way for me to set goals, achieve them, and actually just push myself and be really, really proud of myself. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. And I'm sorry I never shared any of this sooner. I don't know whether I wasn't ready, or it's just, there's been a lot going on, a lot of change in my life, and it's only when I stop and actually think how far I've actually come from being afraid to leave my house to where I am now, that if I can do it, anybody can do it. If you're in a situation where you're feeling like the way I felt, go and get help. You don't have to be a patient forever. You don't have to be unwell forever, but you have to take the first step so that you can feel better. And from there, just develop a lifestyle that works for you. And I'm telling you, like I said, I'm not against, I'm not a medical professional from my own experience. If medical treatment is needed, it's needed. If you need medication, it's needed. Your doctor will tell you that. Then you get yourself the right help, therapy-wise, get on the right track, and you won't need it forever. But I am a firm believer. This is what the main thing to be taken from this is. I am a firm believer in a healthy lifestyle, and exercise in particular, as a preventative for the mental health issues that I went through. That adapt a healthy lifestyle that works for you, that makes you feel good, that makes you feel proud of yourself. Exercise to relieve stress, even if you don't feel like it. It's just so worth it. And I think it's just safeguarding your mental health, keeping you healthy. And just remember that you're not alone, and don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help if you need it.